Welcome everyone. I really hope you enjoy this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks and have a fantastic day.
Hey folks, and welcome back. If you're new to my channel, the biggest reason I created this channel was to share my builds and my experiences and to do testing and demonstrations of how things work so that people can build better airplanes and have safer airplanes and just have overall more fun with the RC community. And the reason I do this is a lot of times I'll see people say things which are completely incorrect, but I don't want to just tell them they're wrong, so I create demonstrators. I create demonstrators like this right here. This is a systems demonstrator that shows all the different systems you could put on an airplane, multi-engine, gears, all that kind of stuff. Then I created this demonstrator that shows when you put different loads on servos, how your voltage can drop, because you don't want to have the voltage get so low the radio quits working and you crash. The way that I measure or put loads on the servos are these little rubber bands, and the servo needs more torque to move as I add rubber bands. So to kick this off, everybody, we're going to see how low I can get voltage on this system and it still operate the servos. Okay, I was not able to get a brownout condition, and believe it or not, I got all the way down to like 3.08 volts and never had the receiver quit working. Did have the servo start to jitter, but you can see here I'm adding rubber bands. So here I have two rubber bands at 5.5 volts, and you'll see how the voltage is dropping on the digital meter. And as I go to 3, which is the next one, still at 5.5 volts, you'll see that I'm dipping into the 4 volts. And I also started out with my battery at different voltage levels. Just like when you fly during the day, your voltage will get lower. And if you're not recharging your flight pack, you could run the battery down enough that you end up having problems. So here we're still at 4.5 volts, and I've got 4 rubber bands, and I'm still not quite stalling the servos. So a fully charged nickel metal hydride battery 4-cell at about 5.5 volts, none of the servos stalled. Okay, now I lowered the voltage to 4.9 volts. And I have this is one rubber band, and you'll see that still, if you're flying a regular trainer, not a 3D plane, not a big quarter scale plane, but a regular trainer with standard servos, they're not affected by you taking off at 4.9 volts. Now this is a brand new battery, folks. The internal resistance is very low on it. And as you see, as I start to add the rubber bands here, you really see the voltage start to drop. And the reason I did this was there was a big argument on Facebook about how voltage is affected on the airplane by the loads on the servos. And honestly, it was very inaccurate. But, you know, I don't want to go on there and say, hey, you're wrong, because people don't know me. So I want to show through experiments how they were wrong. And when I go to 4 bands here, okay, I am starting to stall some servos. And if you notice how low the voltage starts to get, it starts to dip into the 3.8 volts and stuff. So when you start to increase the load on standard servos, you're definitely pulling the battery down unless you go to a higher cell count, like maybe a 5-cell, 6 volts, or you use a LiPo battery through a regulator, which I'll do some demonstrations of that in the future, showing you how you can keep your voltage up doing that. This is only to show if you take your standard radio that you might have bought with your first 4 or 6 channel radio. I mean, basically show your system. If you bought a standard 4 or 6 channel radio that came with standard servos, how much your voltage is going to drop when you start to put bigger loads on it. So let's say you had this in a trainer and then you moved it into a warbird of some kind, a plane that had bigger flying surfaces that went faster, and you started putting bigger loads. Well, you're going to see your voltage is going to start to drop. So it's really important, folks, to understand what type of battery you're hooking up. Now, in the future, I'll show you how you can have a battery that runs your receiver and a battery that runs the servos, so you can never have that that voltage on the receiver get too low. But here I got 4 bands at 4.8, and you can see it's dipping way down into the 3 volt. And next I go to 4.7 volts. And you'll see here that with just one rubber band, a very light load, the voltage isn't dropping much at all. It's not even getting into the 3 volts, like 3.9 volts yet. It's still staying in the mid 4s. But just add one more rubber band, which gives me 2 rubber bands, you can really start to see the voltage starts to drop here. It gets down like 4.2, 4.1. And when we go to 3 rubber bands, then we really start to see the voltage drop. Because we're putting a lot more load. We're down into the 3s now. Okay. So folks, all I'm trying to do is demonstrate how this works. I know there are know-it-alls out there and trolls who are going to say, oh, you know, you didn't prove what the internal resistance of the battery and all that is. I don't care, folks. I know the way I'm doing my experiments. I've been doing this before Jesus had a paper out, so I'm not really that worried about the trolls. Actually, I like trolls. That means they're not trolling on kids that are trying to get into flying FPV or something cool. And now we're going to look at 4 volts. I brought the battery all the way down to 4 volts. Even with one band, it's dipping into the 3s. Now, folks, I've heard people say that a lot of airplane receivers will brown out at 4 volts. My Futaba did not. My Futaba got all the way down to 3.08 volts. The receiver never went offline. The little green light never went out. The servos did start to jitter or judder, or however the term is. But at 2 bands, you can definitely see the voltage being pulled down. And overall, you can see the servos starting to glitch now. Okay, that's because the voltage is getting too low for them to have proper communication with the receiver. Now, I have not done any testing to see what the range of this is, okay, and how it would act if the receiver is at 3.08 volts. Is it going to actually receive a good, strong signal from 500 yards? I'm not doing that kind of testing here, folks. I'm just trying to show you what happens when you pull your voltage down a whole bunch. So thanks for watching this video, folks. That's it. Please like and subscribe. Please understand what I'm trying to do. Rock on, be safe, and get kids involved in flying. See ya.